Double check the plug on that. Remember it was loose on us?
Yep.
And let me get my comments up.
Yeah, it's in there.
Wiggle it a little bit. Okay, I guess the light bulb's out. That's probably all it is. Okay. All right. Were we live for all that?
I think so.
Oh, good.
For the last 20 seconds.
Okay, so they can all be like, oh, that was a shot behind the curtain, them trying to get the machine running ahead of time. And let me just pull up my comments so I can keep an eye on that. Oh, whatever. Sunday ticket. So, welcome to another episode of, what have we decided to call this? Or have we given it a name yet?
The four pine, the four times.
I don't know.
Like that.
Anyway, today we're going to continue another episode where we'll continue working on our block of the month, or not block of the month, our shop hop quilt. Yay, shop hop quilt. I did not get nearly as far along as I wanted to for today's episode, so you were going to see we're going to finish up the main row today. If you recall, last week we made this beautiful pine tree. Wait, do we have any news? Any fabric or anything come in? Or are we good? I don't think there's any news. Yeah, I don't think there's any news. But the All New England Shop Hop starts in September, so get excited for that. Yay! That's what this is all for. So last week we made the pine tree block, and if you want to see how that's done, you can watch last week's episode. And like I keep saying, we're going to edit this together. I hope we do, because otherwise I'm going to talk about this master edit that never happens. But so we made this last week. The week before that, we made this main block, which we really didn't make. All we did was put this piece on the bottom, but we wanted to get this out to 18.5 inches tall, because, and we'll get into that, and I'm just doing a quick review. And then the week before that, we finished up the New Hampshire row, which we decided this was going to be row number 2, and the main was going to be row number 1. So this week, what we're going to do is take all of these parts that we have, the main block, our pine tree. We want to go overhead? I can go overhead.
Okay.
Okay, so are you doing overhead?
Yeah.
So we're going to do the main block, and we're going to take this pine tree, and then remember the bear paws that we made going on 3 or 4 weeks ago now? Well, I took the bear paws and I put them in this giant 9 patch. So we're going to take, these are the 3 components of our top row, our main row. Now, quick word, if one thing you're going to notice, if I did this right, well, the widths may vary a little bit between my blocks. They're all the same height, and that's what's important because this is a row. So everything looks good, and that's going to be our bear paws. All right, so far so good? So far, so good?
I think so.
Nobody's complaining yet? Okay. So, there's only 2 things that I'm worried about as I'm going to put this row. Well, actually, there's only one thing I'm really worried about from a row placement standpoint. And so I figured this would be, we're going to go over how this row is going together. So, what I really want to do, probably best to do this on the overhead look. So, this is our second row. And what I want to happen, the only thing that really concerns me, so I have a lot of room for error, is that my bear paws get put up, my bear tracks get put up in the corner like that, because like I said, the concept is these tracks are going to go all the way through the quilt. So I just want to make sure when I do this row that this ends up in the corner. That's one corner. The other corner I want is, we just want to have main in this upper corner. So now, everything that happens in between, I don't really care as long as my 2 corners line up. Right?
Yeah.
Make sense? So we're going to go cover that today because I don't even know. Let's go to switch views here, Eddie. I don't even know how wide this is, in all honesty. I haven't even measured this yet. But now I have to make a row that fits on top of this with the 2 corners that line up. So that is what we're going to do today. So far, so good? So what we have done, when we had talked about making this, we made everything, and it kind of is a multiple of 6.5 or a 6-inch row. So this is our New Hampshire row, and it's 12.5 inches tall, which means that there's 2 6-inch strips, or 2 6.5-inch strips go together to make 12.5 inches. This is 18.5 6.5 inches. So we're going to need 3 strips. And you'll notice that I've already got the strip order decided in here of how we're going to put our strips together. So we're going to start with the camping, go to the trees, and the bird. So the first thing I got to do is make my strip set that's going to act as a spacer between all my blocks. And so to do that, we take the strips that we cut. Now remember, this we just cut off the bolt at 6.5 inches. It is directional, so we want to make sure it's going in the right direction. This was also cut off the bolt, 6.5 inches, also directional. These aren't full strips because I already cut a little bit off to fill in the holes on our bear paws. But it's the same amount on all of them, so these should all be about the right height. And then this is going to be, remember how we cut the border print? We cut it at 1.5 yards, and then we fussy cut our 6.5 inch strips out to get some different ideas, some different prints. This is the print we're going to use on this row. So now I'm just going to sew these together real quick, and we'll go from there. And anybody in the area, Eddie is playing at the Keene Music Festival on, was it September 2nd?
Yeah.
September 2nd, 6 o'clock.
On the Colonial stage.
On the stage at it's in the Colonial Theater, right?
I don't think so. I think it's.
Oh, they made it sound like super. It's in Keene. And yeah, I thought it was like the Colonial Theater, but it's the Colonial stage at the Keene Music Fest. So if you want to,
I think they're all on the street.
okay, I don't think this is the right one. Oh well, whatever. We'll have extras when we're done. Oh, why is that stuck? Why, Eddie? Why is there we go? So I'm just sewing these strips together. Doesn't seem like it likes me today. But I don't think this machine ever really likes me. I think it's mad at me. And then the other problem I have is I sew half of this on the luminaire, which probably sews about 3 times as fast as its featherweight. So when I'm doing this, I'm like, why is it sewing so slow? Oh, it might help if I didn't, holy crap, that's not gonna be good. Do you see what I did there, Eddie? Oh, I thought I had it wrapping around the wheel there while I was sewing. All right. Why is this? Did you mess around with this machine, Eddie?
No, I don't touch the machine.
You don't touch my machine? Yeah, well, close enough. I don't know what's going on with it. It doesn't seem to be loving us today, but that's all right. I think I grabbed the wrong strip because you'll notice that this one is 4.5 inches long, or a little bit longer. Why is my tension so out of whack? All right, good learning. So you'll see how that's puckered a little bit? Can you see that on there? That is a result of the tension on the machine not being quite right. So you're going to get those little puckers. Now what I could do is go back in, and I'm going to look at the machine, but rather than re-sew this, I'm going to very carefully just kind of pull that pucker out, hopefully, and not worry about it, because that's how I roll. And I think we got it for the most part, but I don't know why it's so... I don't know why it doesn't like us, Eddie. Well, who knows? But yeah, so when you get a little pucker like that, that means your tension's way off. And now a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just pull it and just kind of make it work. And it'll come out with the, when we press it. You're not going to run into this on a newer machine. You usually only see this kind of puckering happening on an older machine. I say that, and then the next thing I know is I'm going to get somebody to call me and say, oh my gosh, my machine. But that is just, tension is too tight on one or the other, and I don't know why, and that just, and the 1/4 inch is way off on that. I'm going to run another seam real quick. It'll make me feel better. Oh, something was dragging. You see how much faster that's feeding? And yep, you know why it was feeding so fast and feeding so well? Guess what happened, Eddie?
It It sounded like something was.
Yeah, there's no thread in it.
You're on the back again.
I'm under on the back again. This is what people tune in for. You know that, right, Eddie?
Yeah.
I don't think they tune in for this at all. But we'll get some nice instrumental music to make it hurt less that it's not working right. And then I always go backwards on this. Is it left to right or right to left, Eddie?
Right to left.
Yes, right to left. Exactly backwards from what I would expect it to be. And as I get older, my eyes are worse too. So I'm trying to see black thread on a black machine with the light bulb that I gotta fix. I'm feeling the pain of the people that are like, I can't see to thread my needle anymore. And if there was ever a reason to buy a new machine, it's for the needle threader. There we go. All right, let's try that again. What say you, Eddie?
I think it'll work this time.
You feeling good about it this time? So am I. Because, you know, we got to get a win here. All right, there we go. Much better. My seam allowance is better. Everything about that just makes me a happier man. I'm thinking what was causing our issues is the thread was hanging up somewhere. All right, good enough. So that's strip one. Glad you all got to watch that and get excited about that. And then, so here's the first strip, and then we're just going to take our birds and put those on top. And again, everything is directional, so you want to make sure that while you're doing this, that you make sure your directions are all going the same way. If you want, if you're making this with different fabric, you could save yourself a lot of trouble and not get directional fabric, and then just however you throw it together. Directional isn't bad as long as you're just kind of paying it, especially for strips. It's pretty easy to keep strips going in the right direction. You start getting into blocks, remembering which end of the block goes where is a whole nother story. All right, so here we go. And that's all we're gonna do is, and now we have a strip set that's made. Yay for us. So now all this strip set is doing, is like I said, because we're doing a row quilt and I don't want to do math, I need something to act as a spacer between my blocks. So if you look at our New Hampshire block, all we did is we took that strip set and it goes in between some of our different blocks to give us the right width. Now I didn't measure how wide this was because you know how I figured out the width, Eddie?
Yeah,
I just made a strip set and then stuck it all in there.
Yeah.
So my strip set is with the fabric.
Yeah.
So I don't, like I said, I'm not sure what this comes out to quite yet. I'm not really that concerned. But here is our spacers for our top row. So now all I'm gonna do, like I said, is I'm gonna iron this flat because that would help to get that ironed real quick. And if you all want to see the ironing process, I'll put us up here so you can witness the magic. The magic of the iron, or the press. Are we pressing or ironing, Eddie?
Looks like you're ironing.
I'm ironing? Okay. And I'm not paying any attention to which direction I'm laying that seam down, which I probably should, but you know, that's not how we roll here. And it's not really gonna matter because we don't need, well, I say that, and it probably will matter when we put it next to our 9 patch, because we could try and lock the seams up on here, but I'm not gonna worry about that. And you can see I got a little bit of a pucker here from when I had my tension issue, which I think was happening that gave us that little pucker is the top thread was pulling a little tight. I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. And I'm sure anybody that's watched this any length of time is surprised about that announcement. Okay. So, like I said, we know for sure that we're going to start with this corner because I think that's going to be the corner that's going to be a pain in the butt. So, what I'm going to do next is, I'm not even going to measure anything right now. You know what I'm going to do, Eddie? I'm just going to sew this to that. Now, if I was being, like, if I had thought this through, are we still overhead? If I had thought this through, I could have figured this out and not have a seam here between these two. But I'm not too worried about it. It's not going to, look at that right there. You can see that's where that was cut. See how that lines up perfectly? Yeah. But the minute I put a seam on, it's going to overlap, so I can't get too excited about that. But if I was smart, I would have figured that out and not pieced that, but that's a whole nother thing. And that would have added a whole nother layer of complexity. All I'm going to do now is I'm just going to square that off. Because you see a little uneven there? Just to make my life easy, I'm just going to square that off. There we go. All right. Then all I'm going to do is take this and sew it to there. And like I said, had I thought about this or planned it a little bit better, I could have sewn these strips directly to there and went this way, and then put this together a row at a time. But I don't really care. It would have looked a little better because the seam won't be there, but it's not that big of a deal for what we're doing. And if you're somebody that is a big deal, that you would want that to line up perfectly, I'm sure that you could figure out how to make that work. But you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. In fact, I should have done that. Now, well, whatever. It's probably going to be one of those things that I'm like, I'm not worried about it now, but then after I make the quilt, I'll say to myself, why didn't I do that? Have you ever done that, Eddie?
Not really.
No, you're just kind of like, whatever. Yes, Brother machines have the best needle threaders. And there's like some machines that say they have a needle threader. Like not all Brothers have the good needle threader. Some of them say, yes, it has a needle threader. But it makes me laugh because it's like a marketing needle threader. Like it doesn't really work as good as it should. But it's technically a needle threader, but you could never get it to work because you got to look at it. You know, it's only going to work on a full moon on a Thursday night. But, so now, if you'll notice, we haven't done any measuring yet for this row. I'm just throwing stuff together because again, that's how we're rolling. And I'm just going to iron that out, press that seam out, and I'll show you what I was talking about, how we probably, if I had, it's not going to be too bad, I'm not going to worry about it, but you'll all see exactly what I'm saying. See, I really should have done this differently, but it's all right. But you see how we've got that seam here? We could have actually done the math out and had the strip continue this way, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over that at all. That would have been easy to do, even with this weird method that I'm using. But it doesn't look bad, right, Eddie? So far, so good?
Yeah, it looks fine.
So far, so good? We like it?
Yeah.
Hold it up.
And once you quilt it
And all that, nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
So far, so good? No complaints?
I don't think anyone's
Okay. So that now, if we gonna go to you've got an overhead shot for me. So now we see that. See how that corner's gonna line right up if we line these up. So now what we want to do, and I'm gonna just pin this, even though I have an allergy to pins. Normally I wouldn't pin this because I wouldn't care. In fact, I'm just gonna use binder clips. I don't even care if they're pins. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna, because if I wasn't working on such a small space, I would just lay this out. But I can't do that right here because I want you all to see the fun we're having. So that's gonna go like that. And what I wanna figure out is, who's calling me? My brothers. All right. Which view are we on, Eddie?
We're on the overhead.
I think we need to do a different view so we can get all of this in here. Is it looking all right from the overhead?
It looks like
Okay.
a quilt.
It looks like a quilt. What we're trying to do now is figure out where we're going to put our tree in. Where did I put our tree? Because that's the length. I'm just kind of eyeballing this right now. So does the tree look good about there? And does that leave us enough space for main? Where did I put main at? What are you laughing at? Like I said, I would normally have this laid out on a table so I wouldn't be this. All right, so that looks good. So what we could do, are we on the overhead?
No.
If we were like trying to make it all like special, we could line that up with that seam there. See how that corner's going to line up with that. But I don't want it to be that precise because then does that really line? Oh, I don't know. Look at that though. Do you see how that fits right on above that?
Oh.
Almost like I planned that. I couldn't have planned that. Do you think I would have planned something like that, Eddie?
I don't think so.
That's like completely by accident. So, all of you watching, can you see it if I go over here?
Yeah.
You see how this, if we put the tree right there, how it's going to line right up with this here? And what's nice about our tree is we do have a little bit of space to trim. So what we're going to do then, I guess, is figure this out and have it fit there. That's where we're going to come to start, and then make it fit here because I think that would be kind of cool. Well, I don't know though, because we don't have a 1/4 inch. It's almost perfect. All right, that's what we're doing. So now we got to figure out. Anybody asking questions yet? So all I want to do now is figure out where to cut this off. And you know how we're going to figure that out? And I've got some clips on there right now.
You're gonna measure it and stuff.
We could measure it, but that's not what you guys came here to see. All I'm going to do though, because what we've decided is that we want that to line up with the top of this here, right?
Yeah.
It wants to line up with this seam here, right?
Yeah.
And there's got to be a 1/4 inch seam past it to line up with that. So if we take where this is at, and assuming that our row underneath is lined up properly, that's where we want to cut it. Why are you laughing, Eddie? Do you see my process?
Yeah.
So I have that, see that little trim right there? That's the point. And all I'm going to do now is make sure that I'm square. And well, I don't know that my row is necessarily perfectly square, but close enough. Where did I put my cutter? You would think that I wouldn't be able to lose things. There we go. So all I'm going to do is that little trim there that I put that's a 1/4 inch out, I'm just going to chop it right there. And we want to save this for later because we're going to need more of that. And now what we're going to do is attach our pine tree, right? Isn't that what we said was going there?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, you all didn't know what you were getting into when I said you were going to see the process on how I put things together. And that's going to go just like that. Now, because I was cutting it kind of close with the 1/4 inch seam where I want it to line up, I am not going to straighten that out because I want to make sure I've got enough there. So all I'm going to do is everything's facing the right direction. It's all directional, so I want to make sure everything's going in the right direction. And then I'm just going to drop that on there. I cut the thread too short. Yep. Maybe we should change the name of the show to Threading a Sewing Machine. Right?
I think I'd say that's 50% of the.
That's 50% of what we do.
Yeah.
Did it go through the hole?
The other 50% is having a good time.
We always have a good time. Because remember, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. That is the rule of quilting, right?
Yeah.
And as a tip, if you're having trouble and you always have to hand thread your needles, if you get top stitch needles or embroidery needles tend to have bigger eyes. Top stitch has like the biggest eye, so it makes it much easier to stick the thread through the hole. All right, so now we're good there. Let's try this again. And remember, don't cut it too short that it wants to come out on me. But I bet we're gonna run out of bobbin because I just feel like that's the way that things are going today. But we're gonna get this row on because we still have to get 4 more rows on after this because there's 4 states in the All New England Shop Hop, right?
Do you think you're gonna finish it before the shop hop's over?
Before the Shop Hop's over?
Yeah.
We're gonna have this done next week, Eddie. Maybe. Well, you see, I'm showing you all the process of how we figure out rows and stuff. So I don't need to show you all of the rows after this, right? Is that a good theory?
Maybe.
Or do you think we should go through everything? Or we'll film it and do like a time lapse. All right. For our viewers at home. So far so good? We liking it? All right, so we just have to add 2 more, add our last block, our last set of spacers and our last block. So I'm not even gonna figure, I don't even care what the measurement is at this point because we don't need a measurement. All we're gonna do now is take our spacer that we just chopped off and sew it onto the other end of our block. And I'm gonna make sure that I have enough thread because we don't want to have not enough thread. And then I'm just gonna zip that through real quick. Okay, with the acoustic guitar in the background, I feel like I'm at one of those hipster cafes with like live music. All right.
When are we getting like a social club in Claremont?
I don't know.
With Cubans.
All right, so we're almost there. We have to just figure out where we want to cut this to add our last block, right?
Yep.
All right, so how are we going to do that?
You're gonna put it and line it up.
We're going to do it like we just did. Now, you could actually, if you had a lot of space and a tape measure, you could measure out your blocks and stuff and figure out exactly how long it needs to be. But, I mean, what fun would that be? How would that be? You know, I got to make my mom, the math teacher, proud by not doing any math for this. Wait, this is what they call...
It's the mental math.
No, isn't there a word for it when you do it spatially? Isn't it like a geometric computation?
It sounds fancy.
Yeah, it's like because you're doing it with an by actually lining it up rather than doing the math. They have a word for that in math. And I wish I knew what it was because then it would sound fancy when I said it. I'd be like, oh, this is a no math quilt. This is a spatially whatever, whatchamadingy, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just making that. I know there's a word for it. And Mom, if you're watching, tell us what it is. All right. So that lines up. Now you see that, like, are we overhead? Oh, no, you can be fine. So that lines up there because that's where we wanted that to line up. So we're just gonna, and you could use pins for this. I'm just using clips. Again, like I said, if I was spread out on a table, I probably would just line it up and go. I don't know that I would bother. And look at that, Eddie. It lines right up on the seam where we wanted it to. Almost like I knew what I was doing. But I would never say that out loud because I probably don't. All right, so here we go. Are we overhead?
Yeah.
So this is our New Hampshire row. And what we want to make sure of now is that main comes all the way to the end. So you saw how we did that before where we just kind of trimmed it? We're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to line that up with the corner with the very end. Now, keep in mind, what's one thing we have to remember, Eddie? The seam allowance, that is correct. We need a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, we're going to be off that little hair, but you know what? I'm not going to worry about it because this is what it is at this point. So, are we overhead?
Yep.
So this right here is where we line up to the bottom of, we're lined up here at the end of our row. If I pull this back, you can see that's the New Hampshire row, that's the top. Here's the edge of the piece that we need to sew on. Now, we want to add our seam allowance, which is a 1/4 inch, right?
Yeah.
1/4 inch in which direction? That way or this way?
This way.
This way, not that way, this way. Because the 1/4 inch has to overlap on that. So all I'm going to do is we could eyeball it, which I'm tempted to do just because what we're doing here. But because we're not, because some of you I'm sure are a little want to see some measurements done, I'm just going to drop this ruler on there at a 1/4 inch past there, and I folded up my New Hampshire, and the edge of that ruler should be where we want it to cut. So I'm going to take that out of there, and we're going to pull that off of there. And like I said, you could actually do some math and figure this out, but you can see how easy it is for me to just do that. There's my little cut there, and it's fabric. So if you're off by 1/8 of an inch, you can always stretch it. And I know that some people have probably just lost their minds when I said that, because you end up with like this really long, like I can't wait to get this on the quilt machine. I bet it's not going to lay flat because of all this stuff. But it's a kind of a scrap fun quilt. So this is my process, my video. So I'm lined up with where I cut it here. Am I on the screen?
Yep.
I lined up where I cut it here, and I'm straight across there, so I know that's a nice square cut. And there I go. Kaboom. Now, I'm going to just leave those clips in place because I don't need to pull them out, because I'm going to want to put them back in place anyway after I zip this up the side. So that's there. This is main. We're going to put main right on the end. And everything's 18. Like I said, this row is 18.5. Everything lines up like it should. And away we go. Right?
Yeah.
We're almost there. Oh, we're running overtime today, Eddie. All right. Now, according to theory, make sure I cut that long enough so you don't have to watch me thread it again. According to theory, are we overhead?
Yep.
So if that goes out there, my theory says that this should fold out. Oh, look at that, Eddie. Why am I so far? Oh, because my clips came out. See how that all lines up. So what do we do from here, Ed?
You sew it.
We're just going to sew it. But I'm going to sew it from this end because we've got a little bit of slop room on the other end because we don't care about the bear tracks lining up. But this is the end that we want the bear tracks to line up. So we're going to start on the bear track end. And if it comes out a little short or a little long, we can always just trim the other side. Any questions so far? Everybody loving it? Is everybody ready for this great reveal? And this is when I start to realize how big this quilt is going to be, Eddie. Yeah, my 1/4 inch has kind of gone out the window a little bit here. But it's between rows, so it doesn't matter. And I probably, another kind of a tip for, if you'll notice, I'm using black thread because that's what I had handy. But a lot of the fabric on here is white.
So you probably want to use a lighter
I
thread.
probably should have used a lighter thread. But hey, we're having fun. So who cares? Do I want to line that? No, I'm not going to line that up because that's going to throw that off. Are you guys ready? Are you excited? I'm on the final stretch here. Oh, look at that. Oh, I wish that I had the camera back here set up so you could see how perfectly this corner lines up. All right, are you all ready for this? Do you think people are ready for the great reveal? What do you think?
I think it looks good.
Am I getting the full shot on there? Do I have to back
I
up
think
more?
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. What do you think? There's going to be a huge quilt. Look at that. That's my full wingspan. That's only 2 rows. We've got 4 more rows to go. Now, I think most of the other rows are only going to be 12 and a half. Maine was the big state, so it's that 18 and a half. But that is our first couple rows. What do you think?
It's going to be a big quilt.
Yeah. You like it?
I think it looks cool.
Is the bear track idea coming through on there?
Yeah.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Or should they have been offset more? Because, it's too... who cares? I'm overthinking it. Right?
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying about the offset tracks? It doesn't matter.
I think it looks fine.
It looks fine? Okay. I can't see it. I'm going to have to look at the video.
Offset.
Doesn't matter.
What does that mean? I think it...
Because a bear doesn't walk in a straight line.
Oh, yeah, I see.
They should be like left and right.
Maybe it's...
But that's just me. I'm sure that nobody cares about that, and it's not going to matter when it's done.
It's a 2-legged bear.
It's a 2-legged bear. So, that is the first 2 rows. So,
Gary says he loves the videos.
I'm glad he's enjoying it. So there you go. That is so far you've seen the design process of how I do this stuff. This is why I hate writing patterns. And this is why I'm a big fan of supporting people that make quilt patterns. Because if I had to write this out step by step, it turns into a huge project. Because a lot of this stuff I'm just kind of making up as I have an idea in my head and I'm putting it together. But you can see where there's measurements that need to be taken and written down and instructions appropriately made so humans can understand them. So if nothing else, appreciate what goes into making a pattern. And the next time you buy a pattern and you're like, hey, let me make a photocopy for my friend, consider what the pattern designer had to go through to make it. Because, I mean, $10 for their time, if you want to keep making patterns. But you're watching the process. Like I said, we're going to get the rest of the rows done, but that's kind of the design process I work with. You've watched the whole thing. We started by fussy cutting the panel. I had no idea where we were going, but I knew I wanted to cut it up. Kind of come up with the size, and it kind of starts to come together as I'm putting it together. And a big part of that is just like jumping off the ledge and going. That's probably the biggest thing about starting a quilt that you don't know where you're going with it, is just start, because it will kind of come to you as you're going. In worst case scenario, you get your seam ripper out and have to make some changes. But anyway, it's pretty much all I've got for today. Well, thank you, Gene. But the one in the Shop Hop magazine actually has dimensions and stuff. I have no idea how big this is going to be. But yeah, we've only got 4 more rows, and don't know. We'll probably make some of the rows and continue the process a little bit, but I don't know that we're going to film everything, because I think at this point you've got a kind of an idea of how it's going together. We've shown you how to make the basic blocks we're using: the bear paw, the bear track, the leaf, and the tree. I think we're just going to stick with those 3 blocks. You see how we're putting the spacers in and figuring out where to put them to make the rows line up. That's pretty much it. And then like what we did with the main block, how we had to add a spacer to the bottom to make it fit the height of the row. But what we'll do is, like I said, next week we'll probably have I don't think we'll have the whole quilt done. We might have a couple rows done, and we'll just kind of review everything, and you can kind of see where it's at. Fingers fingers crossed that I get that far.
Have you been keeping track of how much you've used?
No. I can figure it out though. We did one panel
Yeah.
and 1.25 yards of that border strip.
All right.
From there, everything is either 3.5-inch strip or a 6.5-inch strip, and we just have to figure out how many.
All right.
So I'm thinking, fingers crossed, you're only going to need like 1 yard of everything. I could just say 1.25 yards, and then you have lots of leftovers. And if we're selling the fabric, that's a win for us, right? But I really think, like I said, I think 1 yard of probably 1 yard of everything, because we have so many different prints in here. 1.25 yards, 1.5 yards is going to be more than enough. But we'll figure that out when we're done. We'll probably walk through that and write that all down. All right. Any other questions? Do you have any questions, Eddie, of this amazing quilt that we're making?
I don't think I have any questions.
Yeah, because you get to witness this firsthand.
Yeah.
So we'll, like I said, so next week we'll probably have a few more rows done. I'm trying to decide how far to go along, because I do think it's helpful to see the process for people if you want to see how to make this. Do you think we've covered everything pretty good, Eddie? That if we just threw the rest of the rows on, people could figure out how to do it?
Yeah, maybe you could do. Yeah.
Maybe. We'll see where we're at. We'll see how much time I have to actually get those rows done before next week too. And then we're going to have the other question we have to figure out is, I think I want to put a border on it. I want to do something to frame it. It doesn't need to be huge, but it needs something to kind of frame it in. But that's another discussion. Maybe that's a discussion we'll have next week too. But anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Shop Hop starts week after next, which then means this fabric will then be available, because we're not supposed to sell it before September, though we have it.
We can sell it,
But you just can't give it to you. But anyway, that's that. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot us a message on Facebook, give us a call here at the store. We're here to help. But remember, sew on and be excellent to each other.